All right, well, thanks everybody for coming to the latest VOLTTRON Office Hours. I think people are still filtering in, but we'll go ahead and get started. I think we'll kick off by discussing the upcoming VOLTTRON 5.0 release candidate. There's several main features that are going to be part of that. Um, So I'll go over those quickly, and then I'll turn over the floor to Craig and anybody else on the team who wants to talk about it. So three main features coming are message bus performance improvements. This is something that has been in development for a while. We've been testing it to, as best as we can, make sure that there's no compatibility issues or impacts because the message bus is so it's very central. This lets you achieve performance improvements by 4 to 10 times. I think this was covered at a previous office hours. And it requires no changes to existing agents, so it's a seamless upgrade. We've also added a simplified multi-platform interaction. So previously, if you wanted an agent to talk to another platform, you had to know the IP address. We've now added the capability to interact with topics regardless of what platform they're on, as long as you do a little setup beforehand that ties those together as peers, basically. And then we've also added a tagging service that allows you to assign metadata tags to topics so that you can look things up without having to rely on all the information being in the topic string. Some other additions are improvements to the historian to make them utilize the configuration store, allow the pausing of the forward historian. So if you know that you're going to be upgrading the target of a forward historian, you can pause it so it just caches for a while. We've been addressing memory and file handle leaks in the forward historian, and basically in the way that the reconnection happens sometimes could cause a leak that we've tried to address. And then there's been several contributions by the community that will be part of 5.0 as well, from Casensum and Telemation and others, including an SCP 2.0 historian, a Jupyter notebook that allows you to get a jump start on training, a Prometheus agent, lots of lessons learned with Andrew Rogers and Intellimation as they did their deployment. Those improvements are part of 5.0. I feel like I'm forgetting some. Create agent was also done in concert with Intellimation, and that's in here now. Yeah, so that's a quick summary. I'll turn it over to Craig. Anybody else who wants to discuss this?
Well, I don't know. I don't know that I want to add all that much to that, Jeremy. You did a pretty good summary of what all is coming out. One thing that I will also mention is when Shweta did her demonstration of multi-platform, it relied on some foreknowledge setup, and it also relied on all of the platforms to not only expose a web address but also the main VOLTTRON address. That is being rectified now through there's an RPC function now that we can get the failures, and there's a web interface to allow the failures so you can, from the web interface, you can say, okay, yes, I want to allow this connection from this IP address. And it's only up to the IP address because right now we can't get the information authenticated any other way. It's just the IP address. And I'm not sure if that's ever going to change, but that's what it is right now. Yeah, that's about all that I have. There's one other thing there that Kyle is working on. There's an issue with backpipes, and that's the main reason we aren't pushing it out, the RC out today. But we are we are actively working on fixing an issue, and I'm going to let Kyle talk about that, what the actual problem is, so
So
that you understand why it's such a big deal.
before we jump to that, let me also say a few words about multi-platform PubSub, and then maybe Shweta would chime in. This is something that we promised basically to enhance as an enhancement. The key advantage here is that whereas before you had to know where you wanted to, in a multi-platform situation where you wanted to send something, now you just publish it to a topic and it goes wherever people are listening for it. Our implementation for that is been performance tested. It scales to an extent, and I'm not going to say it's going to scale to 100,000 devices. That's future work to be done. But this allows us to, or this allows agent developers and everybody else really, the flexibility to be able to do multi-platform without knowing things such as IP addresses and such. So with that, maybe Shweta can jump in and say a few words about the multi-platform.
Hello.
We can hear you.
So I'm in the process of creating a walkthrough that will help us in configuring the multi-platform. It should be pretty straightforward. Yeah, as Boris said, I've been running some scalability tests to make sure that the connections, once they are established and messages have been are being communicated between platforms, I am running some tests to make sure that the messages that have been sent, the count of messages that have been sent matches with the count of messages that have been received. So running some performance testing in parallel, scalability testing. So I have 30 platforms that have been running for past 4 to 5 days. So and has been storing all the messages in a historian, and I'm checking it continuously to make sure that that the platforms are running properly and is able to receive all the messages correctly. As I said, the goal is to scale up to a few hundred nodes, and that is a work in progress. I am able to scale up to 50 nodes right now. I need to scale it up some more, and yep, that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you very much. So should we dive into the BACnet discussion?
Yeah, Kyle, do you want to discuss?
I have one question for Shweta.
Yep.
The network communication. So, have you tested dropping connections, like unplugging one of the platforms and being able to put it back on? That's something that we've done testing against. I don't even remember.
Yes, I have tested it before. So it can each platform has the capability to monitor remote connections, so it can detect disconnects and connects. So when a new platform is connected, I get a connection event, and when it is disconnected, I can get a disconnection event. And I've also tested that the subscriptions are all removed on disconnect, and on a new connection, new subscriptions are added.
Awesome, that's great. So we have a couple other things to discuss today, so I'm going to switch over to Kyle.
All right, for real this time? Okay, so there is a possibly, because I don't want to throw Joel Bender under the bus here. He's been developing the backpipes library for a long time, and it's worked very well for us. We think we may have found a problem with the most recent couple of versions of backpipes, but we are working with Joel to see where the problem actually lies. If we, there are some people that need the latest version of backpipes to work with their setup, but there appears to be a problem communicating with multiple devices, or making multiple requests to the same device in quick succession. And so the end result is that data is in one of our on one of our test deployments, we're losing data because it'll send a pair of requests to the same IP address, and one of the responses won't come back. If we roll back the BACnet proxy to the version that uses 13.0 or version 13 of Backpipes, it works. If we make some nominal changes to the proxy so it'll work with version 16 of Backpipes, it exhibits this behavior. We are currently working with Joel, the author of Backpipes, to figure out what the problem is. So I sent him some emails yesterday describing what I think the problem might be, but that's as far as we're at right now. So in its current state, if we can't get it resolved soon, we will roll back the proxy that's in develop back to the version that uses 13, and that will be what gets deployed in 5, unless we can get it sorted out quickly. And if we can get it sorted out and get it working and verify that it works, then we'll go ahead and push it forward to 16. I think 16.2 is the current version.
Right, and the confounding factor is that some of the people who are using 15,
it works just fine.
It works just fine for them. So
yeah, and that's why and in our case we are setting up the drivers to logically divide the same actual BACnet device into logical devices, and that's probably what's causing the problem. For the people that it's working for, they're probably not doing that. But in either way, it's a bug that has to be resolved, because if you logically divvy up the same device across multiple drivers, you could potentially start losing data, and that's a showstopper. So so that's the plan.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome. And what's the so if it's not, does it need to be resolved before we decide to release the release candidate for it to actually make it into the stable version of 5, or are we just going to say if we get it sorted out anytime before 5 goes out, we'll just put it in?
Well, I think if we can't get it resolved quickly, I think we'll go with the strategy we discussed the other day, where you do the check for the Backpipes version.
Oh, yeah, and then we can. Oh, so the other thing is we can set up the proxy to detect which version of Backpipes you have installed, and use whichever one you've got. There's like you say, it's nominal changes. It's changes. It's differences that we can detect it. We can detect it in code and adjust in the proxy, and then if you we will set up the platform so it will install 13 by default, and then if you want to try 16, you can just upgrade Backpipes to 16 and restart the proxy, and it'll just work. So that's what we're going to pursue probably next week.
All right. And then we'll be releasing it as a release candidate just to give everyone time to kick the tires and try things out before we make it the default branch. We want to make sure that there's no issues that need resolving before we do that. So yeah, after we hear back from the community, we'll push it forward into a full release. All right. If there's no questions on this topic, then I'd like to move on to the future work for VOLTTRON. Probably, one of the most major tasks that we've done, probably since, I don't know, the transition from 2 to 3, and the driver and historian framework changes. We're beginning the steps for refactoring the message bus so that you're not tied to 0MQ if you have another solution that you want to use. Just like with the historian and driver framework, you can use whatever protocol, you can use whatever database you want to use. There's a framework that allows you to do that easily. And so we're in the very beginning stages of seeing what does that mean for the platform and the message bus. How can we decouple everything from 0MQ and allow people to use a different solution? And as part of that, we'd like to get community feedback and participation in that. And Bora, do you want to take over and talk about the working group?
Yes. So some of you that may have involved in different standards bodies may be familiar with this, but there's a commonly used context, which is called a working group. So this is our first attempt at doing this officially through the VOLTTRON community. And I will send an email to VOLTTRON developers mailing list after this call as well. But we will be starting a VOLTTRON message bus refactoring working group. Long name. But the goal is to coordinate our work with the community and not only get feedback, but hopefully exercise the term working in the working group and see if other people are interested in actually working on this. So if you are, I'm going to type my email address here. Send me an email. It's bora@pnnl.gov, so that I have your names. I will be creating a mailing list for this email mailing list, and we will post announcements there for activities and documents, etc. And then we'll basically go from there and see where it leads us. As Jeremy said, this is a fairly substantial task for us to accomplish, and we can definitely use all the help we can get. And we want to make sure that we consider different use cases, we consider different requirements, and so that one day you may have a VOLTTRON instance that is using MQTT or ActiveMQ or RabbitMQ or maybe even something else. And then as part of this working group, one of the things that we're going to talk about and decide is whether we want to have a VOLTTRON instance that supports both ActiveMQ and MQTT, or ActiveMQ, MQTT, and 0MQ, and basically be able to translate between these multiple different message buses.
Right. Because
yeah, go ahead, Jeremy. And that's basically all I wanted to say on that.
Just to follow up on that, because one thing that we don't want to have happen though is a fracturing of the VOLTTRON ecosystem, where these are the VOLTTRON platforms that talk MQTT. They can't talk at all with the ones using 0MQ or RabbitMQ or something like that. We want to ensure that if you're in VOLTTRON, you can talk to other VOLTTRONs regardless of what the message bus is. So that'll be part of this process as well.
Hey guys.
Hey.
Do you guys have a minute just to explain what the advantages of these other message buses are versus what you've got right now?
Yes.
So briefly summarize why,
So why are we doing this? That's a good question.
Some need for it, obviously.
Yeah.
If you are using a pure VOLTTRON deployment and you didn't have anything legacy to use, and you're completely happy with the way that we are using ZeroMQ, especially with the new multi-platform pops-up improvements and performance improvements that are done over the last year, there's no need for you to change. In fact, as long as you keep it a pure VOLTTRON environment, that's all you need ever. And as part of the effort that we're going to do, ZeroMQ is going to be there's a term for it. It's called lingua franca, and it's basically the de facto language of communication for VOLTTRON platforms. We will always support ZeroMQ, and it will basically be, if you get a VOLTTRON deployment, you will get ZeroMQ. Whether you use it or not will be up to you. Now, having said that, MQTT has over ZeroMQ. Whether it has technical benefits is something that we can probably discuss in more detail. MQTT has a formal broker type architecture, so in certain topologies it does scale better. However, other than that, there's really not much else, in my opinion, there. Having said that, from a deployment perspective, MQTT has been around for a long time. And if you have existing deployments that use MQTT already and you wanted to use VOLTTRON with them natively without going through the translation, then it would make sense for you to use MQTT for that. Amazon IoT and Azure IoT support MQTT by default. So you just basically start publishing MQTT messages and then it goes there. That's the benefit of MQTT and why you may want to use it. ActiveMQ is another message bus that I'm familiar with. ActiveMQ is an enterprise-grade message bus. If you wanted to run like high-performance transactions, and it's supported by Apache Foundation, it has very cool features that I'm not going to get into here, but it also has a built-in authentication framework, a lot like ZeroMQ, or a plugin a lot like ZeroMQ. So that's one reason why, if you wanted to use VOLTTRON and then somehow plug it into enterprise messaging system, say you're a utility, right, and you already have something like that, then that would be one reason why you want to use ActiveMQ. I don't know enough about RabbitMQ to comment, but this is something that has been brought up by Kisensum as to something that they would like to see in VOLTTRON. So here's the deal. We did this in the Historian. When we started, we only supported SMAP. And then we said, people want to use their own historians, whatever they may be. And we basically abstracted out the historian interface and we made it available. And so you can do whatever historian you wanted to use, right? As long as it works for your use case. We're doing the same thing with Message Bus. So that if somebody wanted to use VOLTTRON or they're looking at VOLTTRON and they see ZeroMQ and they're like, oh, well, I'm big on RabbitMQ. I don't want to use this. And so think of it as a further flexibility on the platform and enabling different use cases that depends on basically whoever is using the platform. And that's basically the situation here. Go ahead.
And it also future-proofs the platform too. If a new message bus comes along and it has a lot of features that we'd like to make use of, then we want to be able to utilize that and not have to reinvent the wheel if we want those features in the ZeroMQ version of things. So yeah, it just adds a lot of flexibility and makes sure that we're not tied directly to any one technology. And I don't know, Kisensum, did you want to maybe talk because you're very interested in this?
One thing to say. One other thing is that with this, different message buses have different capabilities, right? Mm-hmm. So one secures things one way, one secures things another way. So using these other message buses, what we're going to try and do is have the root common security model still enabled, and hopefully we can figure out a way to do what we're doing with ZeroMQ the most effective way to do that with these other message buses.
Oh, thanks, guys. That makes a lot of sense.
All right, thanks. All right. Are there any other questions or topics that people wanted to talk about?
Jeremy, this is Terry Hur. You mentioned earlier on the tags that was added. Is that something that's supported now? Do you've added that recently? Because I might have missed that part.
It's in develop. It is not part of 4.1. It'll be a new feature for the 5.0 release.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Well, the supporting of tags, is that going to be sort of down at the individual box level, or just at the database level? I mean, so will the tags go across the message bus?
It will be in the data at the database level, yeah.
Okay.
Terry, sorry, Jeremy, go ahead.
Yeah, go for it.
I was going to say, so that is a good suggestion, though, and we can basically send it with the point if needed to be done.
Well, I'm not sure that it is needed. Right now, our process is that we don't. The tags are all at the database level, and that may save, packet size. We are dealing. We particularly use modems, I guess, a fair amount, and so we are careful about the amount of data that we have to push across. So I was just curious. I know that in the future, when I say in the future BACnet and the future devices downstream will more and more support tagging down at the device level. That's very rare now. Probably only the JACEs support it, but I do see, BACnet's going to have that, and I think it's going to be so. At some point, picking up the message, that'll be part of the metadata that you can scrape off of the BACnet object in the future. So then moving it across the bus at least one time, right, would be helpful.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure. Once this service gets out there to people, I'm sure we'll have recommendations from everyone on what to do with it.
Yeah, that's excellent. I mean, that's helpful for us for sure, because we are doing tagging now at the database level, and so I don't know that I was part of discussions. I know you don't probably have a firm date on 5.0, but a target idea when that's coming?
So the release candidate should be in the next couple weeks.
Okay.
As we talked about, there's the issue with backpipes that we need to resolve before we're comfortable pushing it out. Because the BACnet proxy is essential for data collection. So we want to make sure we have that resolved. Once that's resolved, then we'll do a RC1 release, and hopefully, then we'll get some feedback from the community. We'll get more experience using it here, and after we've got enough feedback, then we'll push it as a full release.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Just because we recognize that lots of people are using this as part of their operations, and we don't want to push an update too quickly. So we'll let it percolate for a bit before we make it the default.
It's Nigel here from SES. I was a bit late on the call, so I didn't hear what that backpipes issue was. Terry, do you want to just reiterate that for me?
Right. So there's been some issues with the latest version of backpipes. So backpipes is what we're using to do the BACnet work.
Right.
And some people are using it with no problem, but at least our internal deployment, when we've done testing with the latest version of backpipes, we're having data collection issues. And reverting back to an old version of backpipes resolves those issues. So we're trying to Kyle is working with the creator of Backpipes to try and resolve that.
Okay.
And then at worst, what we'll do is we'll just make it so that we can auto detect which version of Backpipes you're using, and then do what's necessary to work with either one.
And it's not the BBMD issue that you're resolving or working on at all right now? There's a problem to support BBMDs, but that's a different thing.
That has nothing to do with that.
Okay.
This is more general, acquiring data under normal circumstances. There's in some cases newer versions of Backpipes, it drops data and it never gets back to the platform.
Okay. Well,
this is like this is a showstopper, so we need to fix it.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yep.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anything else? If not, we will call it a meeting.
Thanks, guys. Daniel and I here at SES are just experiencing a bit of a problem getting some data to come into the VOLTTRON Central. If one of you guys could maybe stay on the line for a few minutes to help out, that'd be
This is the question that was asked in general.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we're still trying to resolve it. So.
Okay. Yeah, Craig and I will hang out.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah. Because I need to jump to another call. So if you guys.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I suppose we can help.
You suppose?
Well, I got. What did I get? I got volunteered. So yeah, I'll help. I'm also been.
Wait, Nigel,
Nigel,
we're always happy to help. So, despite.
Well, I figured since it's only 11:36,
Yeah. No, we've got time.
That's the whole point of the office hours. So we will stay on and help.
All right.
I'm just giving Craig a hard time.
Yeah.